Right, NFL coaching carousel, Graziano, that's your specialty.
This I can do.
We got 4 head coach openings remaining. We start with the team that has the #1 pick in the draft, and the Raiders.
Raiders met last night with Davis Webb, who's the Broncos quarterback's coach. The Bills met with him earlier that day as well. So he's an interesting candidate, both those places. Raiders also talked to former Giants coach Brian Daboll over the weekend. They've talked to Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady twice. It's possible they've been connected to Clint Kubiak, the Seahawks offensive coordinator. Possible they wait that out. They can't hire him till after the Super Bowl now. But if the Raiders are making a decision this week, it's probably between one of those 3 guys I mentioned earlier. Cleveland Browns spent a good chunk of their day yesterday in Los Angeles interviewing Nate Scheelhaase, who is the Rams passing game coordinator, another young coaching prospect who's been of interest to the Browns for some time. He also talked to the Bills last night, did a virtual interview with them. If not Scheelhaase, you see here Jim Schwartz, the Browns defensive coordinator. They've interviewed him twice for the head coach job. He's interested. I think they'd like to bring in a young offensive coach and pair with Schwartz, but if they can't get the coach they want, then maybe Schwartz ends up being the coach they want. And then the Steelers are going to introduce their head coach today. He is Mike McCarthy. They hired him over the weekend after a relatively brief and concentrated interview process. They felt McCarthy was the right guy to help them continue to win now and also shepherd them into the next quarterback era of their franchise, whatever that turns out to be.
He's 62 years old, Mike McCarthy. You see the ages of the previous head coaches. We're looking at every single person to have coached the Steelers since 1969. So he's about as old as any of the 2 of them were combined, any 2 of the 3 of them. It's a totally different move for them.
Yeah.
And here's the way I look at it, Jeff, Saturday, and you tell me, we were talking about it on Sunday NFL Countdown. Many people believe, obviously the Steelers are not among them, the Steeler front office, that this team needs to just reset completely, just start all over again. And you don't do that with a 62-year-old head coach. And I don't care what they say, at least part of this is because they're still hoping to bring back Aaron Rodgers, because he's probably the best thing they have going for them right now. So you got a 62-year-old head coach and a 43-year-old quarterback. That's a very strange way to start rebuilding a franchise. What do you think of these moves by the Steelers?
Yeah, this ain't a rebuild. Like you just said, you don't bring in a 43-year-old QB and a 60-year-old head coach and not want to win right now, which is pretty amazing. And I would say part of why you brought McCarthy in to begin with is to develop the next quarterback. And so to bring in a 43-year-old, I don't know if they bring Rodgers back and then draft one and allow McCarthy to kind of develop him along as he watches under Aaron Rodgers. I really don't understand the move, in my opinion. This is kind of one of the more confusing hires, in my opinion. Does a team really feel like they're right on the precipice of winning a championship, competing for it? I just didn't see it. The defense is aging. They're one of the most expensive defenses in the league. Offense it wasn't there. I mean, you got one receiver. You go get more guys. I don't know. The whole thing just didn't fit great, unless, to your point, it's McCarthy, Rodgers, and they think they can go on a run.
There's an element of this. Someone used the expression, they just don't seem willing to take their medicine. And look, on some level, I respect that, right? The Rooney's, they're about trying to win all the time.
Yeah. And the roster needs an overhaul. I mean, like, this is an interesting move because it's a move of a team that expects to continue to be as good as it's been.
Right.
And it's possible that the head coach was holding the whole thing together and the roster is going to start to show some cracks under a different coach. Now, it's important to note, the Steelers did not fire Mike Tomlin. They would have brought him back.
Right.
So, like, this was not their top choice. The top choice was Tomlin. If you're hiring your head coach because you think it'll help you keep 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers, who hasn't finished in the top 22 in QBR in 5 years, that's idiotic.
Right.
I mean, that would be a top 10 stupid decision in NFL history. I don't think the Steelers did that.
Right.
I give them more credit than that.
Right.
I think they see Mike McCarthy as a better, more accomplished head coach than the other candidates they were talking to, and they know they're going to need to figure out quarterback for real at some point, and they feel like he's the kind of guy that can do that.
I agree. Maybe the way I should have said it is, it does feel like it makes it likelier to me that Rodgers comes back for one more year than if they had hired a 32-year-old coach. Quick final thoughts. Go ahead, Neek, and then J-Mac.
Yeah, I'm surprised that we all think that because they brought in McCarthy means that they're trying to make a push for the Super Bowl. No. They brought in someone who's stable, who they know can be a head coach. They might be willing to go into this transition. I think the reason why we believe that they aren't is because they never have. That's more the evidence to me that they may not blow this up and start completely over. But the quarterback question is, the future there is not going to be Aaron Rodgers. Whether he comes back or not, or whether Mike McCarthy is a head coach in order to entice him back or not, is irrelevant. They need to bring in a lot of other quarterbacks, including maybe drafting one and signing or trading for one to start trying to answer that question.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, you see the McCarthy, you compare his resume to John Harbaugh's, who was the hottest name on the list this offseason when it comes to head coaches. So it kind of makes sense. But I think for Steelers fans, it almost feels like Groundhog Day, where you're like, all right, we're going to bring Mike McCarthy in. What's going to be different about the 2026 Steelers that's been different from the past 5 or 6 years where they haven't been able to win a playoff game? So I think for fans, there's a lot left to be desired. And they were looking at some of those other candidates, the Weavers, the Floreses, and thought maybe those guys could come in and really shake things up.
Or one of these young guys. There's all these uber young guys that would have felt much more Steeler-like to me.
Mike McCarthy is not far removed from, 3 straight 12-win seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. The guy can coach.
Good coach.
Yes, of course.
But it doesn't feel like an ambitious hire. And that's, I think, what is probably deflating to the fans if that's the way they're receiving it.
All right, we will see. We'll see how they receive it as we continue from ghosts to glory.
So the fact that he hasn't interviewed anywhere, when I can almost vow that there's been at least one team that has reached out to interview him, that tells me that that's not something right now that's top of mind for him. He's got 2 years left on his contract. We haven't heard anything official from him. But my read on it is that he's going to take his time. He'll return to coaching, but he'll return to coaching on his schedule.
Interesting. Adam, I know you said that you could see all of the head coaching vacancies being filled by tomorrow. Has anything happened since you made that comment with Pat McAfee that maybe changes your opinion, or do you still think that that's what we should be trending towards?
I still think that we will have all jobs either filled or clarity on by the end of the day tomorrow. That's my belief. That's my prediction. I'm standing to it. So we've got 4 openings right now: Arizona, Buffalo, Cleveland, Vegas. And I do think that there will be action today, tomorrow. And if there happens to be one that remains open beyond that, it would be either because they just couldn't get the deal done with a certain candidate, or one of these teams decides that it wants to wait for Clint Kubiak. But I think, from what I can tell, it certainly seems like teams are very hesitant to wait. And it feels like teams like certain candidates right now. And I'll stand by it. I think by the end of the day tomorrow, I think we'll have all jobs filled or clarity on all of them.
Adam, the Steelers obviously were a team that had a vacancy. They filled it with hiring Mike McCarthy, to the ire of a lot of the Pittsburgh Steelers fan base. I'm curious what you've been hearing in terms of how the McCarthy hire impacts Aaron Rodgers standing with the organization and the team leaving the door, quote, open for his return in 2026.
Yeah, well, the team has left it open all along. Like, during the players' exit interviews, almost to a man, the players vowed for Aaron Rodgers. And I think people have underestimated and not realized how much respect he had in that locker room and how well received his season there was. The players there loved him. And I think that the majority of them want him back next year. And the Pittsburgh Steelers went out and made their hire because they believed that Mike McCarthy was the right coach for the job, period. The fact that there is a connection to Aaron Rodgers is a bonus. It's not why they hired him, but I don't think it hurts. Now, how does it change it? Look, this is Aaron Rodgers' decision. Does he want to play or not? Period. And so he now has one more factor to factor in there. Mike McCarthy will be coaching the team, and he'll come to a decision when he does, and he'll decide what he does. These things move on his timeline. So that's the situation there. They have the coach that they thought would help. And if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back, They've got Mason Rudolph. They've got Will Howard. And I'm sure they'd add another quarterback in the draft or via free agency.
Shefty, just as a quick follow-up, you said that Mike McCarthy was the Steelers guy all along. Why have the Steelers departed from what they do from a coaching hire philosophy and go with somebody that is a former head coach from around the league rather than promoting a coordinator and going with the first-timer?
I just think that that's where they feel like they're at. You know, if we go back to Art Rooney at the press conference in which he discussed Mike Tomlin stepping down, he talked about the fact that they want to compete now, that they're not in rebuild mode, that that's not the way they're thinking and operating. And to use Mike Tomlin's line, the standard is the standard. And I think their standard is they expect to be able to compete for and win the division in the AFC North. And so, look, I'm not a part of that interview process, but they felt like the experience that Mike McCarthy had was valuable. They felt like his ability to work with quarterbacks was valuable. And they ultimately decided that that was the call. And you know, it's very different than anything they've ever done. Not only is Mike McCarthy the oldest coach they've ever hired, he's the oldest coach they've ever had, period. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, Mike Tomlin, none of them got to 62 of coaching. So he automatically, from day one, becomes the oldest coach that Pittsburgh Steelers have ever had. He brings an offensive background, which is not what they've hired in the past. So, I mean, it shatters the mold, but it's a guy who knows the city, understands the franchise, is connected to the people in the city and the region, knows it as well as anybody there. And they just felt like that was the right move.
We're talking with Adam Schefter, Senior NFL Insider. Adam Schefter Podcast, of course, wherever podcasts are found here on Unsportsmanlike, presented by Progressive Insurance. Schefter, you said your expectation, obviously things can change, is that all 4 vacant jobs will be filled by tomorrow night, let's just say. I just want to make sure that I have all of the reporting that you have put out there correct in terms of the candidates. Correct me where I'm wrong on any of this. Vegas, we expect to potentially go for Davis Webb, Joe Brady, Brian Daboll, or Clint Kubiak. Arizona, it seems like it's going to be Mike LaFleur is where it's trending, I guess, in that direction. Cleveland, Nate Scheelhaus, Jim Schwartz. Buffalo, Brian Daboll, Nate Scheelhaus, Joe Brady, Davis Webb. Is that right? Am I missing anybody? Are there surprise candidates? Did I leave anyone out?
You're missing Todd Monken from Cleveland.
Okay.
And Brent Udinsky from Buffalo.
Interesting. Okay, so go ahead.
But I think you have the guys like, again, if I were guessing this morning, today, I would guess. I don't want to guess because then guessing becomes reporting, and that's not right. So we're not going to do that. But yes, you have the list of people.
What if we do this? What if you text me and I'll guess them as mine, and then we'll never know it's yours?
There you go.
Yeah, we can do it that way.
Too, Evan.
I mean, we can do it that way. Okay, so then basically the first wave were the coaches that have been there and done that. The second wave are the coaches that you hope can do that. Is that correct?
What do you mean?
Like if you look at Mike McCarthy, Kevin Stefanski, John Harbaugh, Robert Saleh, all guys that have already coached. This wave, outside of Jim Schwartz, no one's been a head coach in terms of this last wave of coaching, which then leads me to this. Why is Buffalo not hiring a win-now guy?
Who do you want him to hire as a win-now guy?
Okay, so I would have considered Mike McCarthy if I'm them. I would have considered Kevin Stefanski. Obviously, it happened after John Harbaugh. I would personally consider Bill Belichick. They are not, but I think it's a no-brainer on a 2-year deal, 3-year deal, whatever it is. It's a quick fix. That's what they need. Brian Daboll, I think, still could be in the mix. Shout out to him on that one. Like, it just doesn't feel like they are going to hire the guy that they know has been there and done that, and they're hiring a guy who has to have the single greatest rookie season in the history of the sport.
I mean, look, they're bringing in people that I think that they have